This is Marketing from the Frontlines, where we speak with B2B marketers who are in the trenches, bringing technology to market. Here's your host, Brett Stapper, CEO of Frontlines.io.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Marketing from the Frontlines. Today we're speaking with Táňa Rulková, VP of Marketing at TipHaus's. Táňa, how are you?
I'm doing great. Great to be on. Thank you so much, Brett.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how did I do in pronouncing your last name? I really tried there to emphasize it.
Oh, it sounds very, Russian to people. It's Rulková, so it's very, very strong. You did like 6, I would say, 5, 6.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. And with that last name, let's go ahead and talk about, tell us about growing up and what you were doing before you moved to the US.
Oh, okay. Well, this could be a really long story. I'm going to try to keep it below 1 minute here. So I'm from Czech Republic. I grew up over there, spent 20 years of my life there and exploring Europe, traveling around. And then when I was 20, I took my gap year to come to the US, and I was actually a live-in nanny. So it's called an au pair. I got to do this in Seattle. It was super fun experience. I enjoyed it so very much, and I loved living here, and taking a break from certain family members was really nice too. And, the ocean is a really cool distance. So I ended up extending that for another year. And instead of going back to Czech Republic and studying university over there, as I planned, I ended up sticking around here and went to Bellevue College up in Washington. And it was an awesome decision. And that's what got me into marketing.
What about restaurant marketing? Just looking at your background, it seems like you spent a lot of your career focused on restaurant marketing. How'd that happen?
Yeah, I live and breathe the hospitality industry. So basically back in Czech Republic, my dad had a pub. So I started working for him way before it was even legal. I guess over there, nobody's really tracking. So I started working for him when I was like 13, 14, just like, regular waitress, bartender, all that stuff. And then when I was in the US, when I was done with the au pair nanny thing and I was in school, one of the few jobs that I could do while I was at school was bartending at night, waitressing and doing party planning, basically event planning over the weekend. So I was in the hospitality industry throughout my college, always at least as a part-time, usually as a full-time. And as soon as I started doing marketing, we'll probably talk about this later more, but I do really enjoy a lot of marketing for beer brands and just beverage, you could say beverage companies. So that's kind of what got me immediately sticking around the hospitality industry when I got my degree.
Is there a specific brand that you really admire in the hospitality industry?
Yeah, I have so many, but funny thing is that I definitely have all of my favorites are in the beverage space. So growing up in the Czech Republic, it's going to probably sound weird to American audience, but Coca-Cola was like a luxurious, fancy and rare thing for us to have. It was reserved for special occasions, and their marketing, the nostalgic Christmas commercials, all of that left a huge impression on me. So I loved that brand since I was really young kid without knowing anything about what advertising really was, what it did to my brain. And of course, I started drinking Coke as a result of that. But later, as I went into high school back in Czech Republic, that was business focused, and I started understanding the psychology behind advertising and marketing. I definitely developed the understanding and appreciation of Guinness. And I would say Guinness was probably, and it still truly is, one of my favorite brands out there. And I actually had the chance to visit the Guinness brewery at their museum in Dublin a couple of years ago. And it was absolutely amazing to geek out at their advertising section. It was super fun, and I highly recommend it to anybody here listening. Really, really cool experience.
I'm a big fan of Coca-Cola. I feel like you have to be a fan of Coca-Cola. I'm a bigger fan, though, of this guy named Michael Ovitz. He founded an agency called CAA, the Creative Artist Agency. Have you heard of him?
I don't think so. No, tell me more.
He's a fascinating guy. Yeah, they kind of say you can't even fathom the power that he had because it doesn't even exist today. But in the 80s, something like that, he controlled all of Hollywood. He had every actor, every producer, every author, every director, everything reported to him. But he wasn't just satisfied with that. He wanted to move into the agency business. So he went in and stole Coca-Cola from McCann. I'll probably get some of the numbers wrong, but he went in, did a bake-off. He won Coca-Cola. I think McCann had 5,000 employees working on Coca-Cola. Michael Ovitz had 5. And he kind of invented this idea of outsourcing different functions. He had a big creative team, obviously, because of what he was doing with the talent agency. But it's just kind of crazy story And Michael Ovitz, or his agency was, behind the polar bears, all of that kind of stuff came from this guy named Michael Ovitz.
Yes, you know what? Now that I've looked him up and I'm seeing his picture in front of my face, I think I've seen him in some of my advertising classes a while ago. So I hope my marketing teacher will never listen to this. I won't say that like, okay, you didn't remember.
He's awesome. And he's had probably a massive impact on technology as well. Like he did CAA and then he, was very early with Andreessen Horowitz and had a huge impact there on how they kind of shaped the firm. So very, very cool guy, recommend studying, not to go on a tangent too much about him and Coca-Cola, but really a fascinating person.
I definitely have a homework then. Thanks, Brett.
Any other brands that come to mind? It doesn't even have to be hospitality related. We can go as wide as you want. Like, who is your just favorite brand in the whole world?
Favorite brand in the whole world? Oh, gosh. I don't want to sound an alcoholic. I could be listing a lot of beer brands. Particularly lately, probably, I really relate as, a consumer who cares for the environment. I really relate to Patagonia and Cotopaxi. Those are two brands that I'm willing to spend the money on for my gears. I hike a lot. I run a lot. I just, I'm a very outdoorsy person. That's why I kind of stuck here in Colorado. And I really appreciate how these brands communicate to the consumers and how they're able to connect with us more as on the level of, hey, being humans first, being helpful to the environment first. And then as a side of it, we also actually do some really cool products that you might enjoy while you're out there hiking and camping and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're one of those brands that just seems more aligned than probably any other brand that I've ever heard of. Sometimes they talk about, or sometimes brands will talk about sustainability or whatever. And it's just corporate BS. Patagonia, it's very real in that brand.
Absolutely. So I don't like dairy milk at all. And one of the brands that I really enjoy watching, and I'm actually even subscribed to their newsletter, is Oatly. I don't know if you're much of a milk consumer and if you do oat milk at all, but I think they're brilliant at breaking through the clutter with their I would almost say a weird voice, bold, weird, just radically transparent. They're just really cool and do things differently. They stand out of the crowd. And the few times that I have seen their advertisements, it's it stands out to the point that I remember it, next day or so. And how much clutter there is these days. So remembering anything past 10 seconds is already pretty successful, I think. And they do, I think, fantastic job at it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like they've become known in the circles of marketers of being a brand that's very good at marketing. So I think about them a lot. I see their stuff shared all the time. They just recently had a big campaign. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I saw the campaign. I just said, they did it again. They've gone viral again. They have a machine to go viral is what it seems like.
And I think one thing that I really like about that is also because a lot of marketers, it's hard to relate to a brand that is doing something really, really, really crazy cool. Let's just say Red Bull, being energy drink, their positioning, I think, is a lot easier there to play around with than oat milk. And I think that it's really much more relatable for us marketers that might be doing SaaS and might be doing things that are maybe not as quote unquote sexy, and I feel like oat milk, in my opinion, is not as necessarily easy to sell. And as you can tell, nobody else in that space is doing what Oatly is doing. So they're really showing that you can be unique, you can be cool, you can be bold, you can be authentic, very authentic.
100%, 100%. Now let's dive a bit into your current role and everything that you're doing there. So looks like you've been there for just about a little bit over a year. When you joined the team, what did the marketing program and the marketing strategy look like?
So there was a lot of moving pieces at the time. And I would just say that it was missing the larger connection because unfortunately there wasn't anybody dedicated specifically to this role and really leading the efforts and thinking the bigger picture, thinking strategy. It was honestly much more reactive. So the content marketing manager here at the time, and she's still here and she's absolutely incredible. And she works two. So I'm very fortunate that she's stuck around even with me. But at the time, it was much more of a direction of, hey, customer success really needs this. Product team really needs this. Sales team needs this. So kind of just running around making every team happy in the organization, but not really sometimes saying hey, you know what, there are some other priorities that need to get done. And there wasn't that bigger picture and a structure at the time.
So you come in, what did the first 30 days look like for you? What were your top priorities then?
Oh gosh, that was so much. I would say honestly, I obviously first started understanding I'm big into sales alignment. So my biggest thing was immediately just jumping on a lot of demo calls and understanding better on what the pain points are, what our strengths and weaknesses opportunities, basically like basic SWOT, what that is for us. Huge product familiarization. And I obviously, as every marketer would do, I reviewed what the existing marketing collateral was and what our digital presence was like and what should be fixed. And I kind of outlined, what that should be looking like in the next 30, 60, 90 days as I was obviously aboard jumping in. I also just fine-tuned our messaging and created documentation for like clear target audience, their segments, what's happening in terms of like our exciting customer and existing good large customers that we can be highlighting to use it for our success. I think that was my first 30 days, but there was just so much happening. I mean, you know how it is in startup.
This show is brought to you by Frontlines Media, a podcast production studio that helps B2B founders launch, manage, and grow their own podcast. Now, if you're a founder, you may be thinking, I don't have time to host a podcast. I've got a company to build. Well, that's exactly what we built our service to do. You show up and host, and we handle literally everything else. To set up a call to discuss launching your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. Now, back to today's episode.
Yeah. Everything has to be done.
Exactly. And you wear so many hats too. And I think that when you're joining a small startup that's growing really fast too, you need to be jumping around a lot out of your area. So, you do spend, I would say I was trying to spend, let's just say 70% into marketing, but you still spend so much time on sales and customer success and product. It's fun. It's exciting. And that's what I really love about startups, to be honest.
I think you're probably the first guest that I brought on where I've had the founders of the two companies that you've worked at on the podcast. So I may get the name wrong, but I think it's Leaf from TipHaus's. We had him on. And then was it Tim, I think from GoTab we had on the show. Do I have the names right?
That is so true. Yes. Tim is my ex-boss. Sorry for the mispronunciation. So yes, he is from GoTab, and then Leif is our leader here at TipHaus.
Now, what's been the biggest difference? Because I know GoTab is much, much larger than TipHaus. So what has that been like going from a larger startup still? I think GoTab probably still identifies as a startup. What was that like going from them to a smaller startup?
I mean, I've worked even for even smaller startup than that. So I can't complain. I like the ability to have more of, you could say, runway and have more space to run with my ideas and do things my way. So I probably enjoy that smaller space a little bit more. Just because, like, honestly, in bigger companies, and I'm not saying this is GoTab, but the bigger that usually you go, the harder it gets to have that freedom and ability to move quickly and be agile. My example would be that for a while, I speak 5 languages. I worked as a quality assurance tester in Microsoft for a while. And when I needed to change anything, it just, what I was told is like, hey, if you need to change it, you will need to teach 3,000 people how to do it and own it and implement it and do it for the next 3 years. So it's like, I enjoy this small environment where if things need to change, you can change it from one day to another or from 1 week to another. So I really thrive in this environment. It keeps it so much more fun for my job.
Let's talk a little bit about case studies. So when I was reviewing your LinkedIn prior to the interview, one thing that stood out is that you had done 30 plus case studies already. And as we talked about, you're just over a year in. How did you crank out that many case studies?
Gosh, you know what? I think it's actually now like 50. It's been a lot. So I'm a big believer in being hands-on with CS heavily and with the sales heavily. I don't think that you can be successful marketer if you're not talking to them on ideally daily basis. And so big part of that is that it's a lot easier to do the case studies if you know who is a happy customer. And I usually start monitoring this already in the sales process, as I know that, hey, somebody was really, really struggling with not having the right solution. They found TipHaus, they loved it. And I already hear really positive feedback from the sales in the trial period. I just put them in my project management software, and I'm just kind of tracking the progress of this, check with CS when the time is right, and just hop on a customer call, learn more about them. They give me so many ideas for a lot of other things for website and stuff like that, it goes way far beyond just doing case study when I have these important customer calls, I would say.
How do you get customers to be okay with doing case studies? That's one thing that I've always struggled with.
I would say probably just trying to explain them that this is really just a quick call, and I will try to make it really efficient for them. And then obviously I'm open to feedback and hear what we can improve for them. Sometimes, TipHaus, luckily, I work for a company that TipHaus has a ton of very, very happy, satisfied customers. But there will be some times when occasionally you jump on a call with a customer that might have certain feature requests that, that feature was requested some time ago. And unfortunately still hasn't been prioritized. So I have to manage the expectations there. But I like becoming a part of that and being able to communicate that and being able to eventually see that customer being happy with getting what they wanted, what they asked for. So I think that a lot of it has to do with how they really approach the call since the beginning. And I kind of lead the conversation from there. I mean, there has been many case study interviews that I've done that were supposed to be a quick 15, 20 minutes. And, we ended up chatting for 45 and really went deep dive in, and they gave me some fantastic feedback for the product. That's super helpful. Sometimes there were also some complaints, and that's fine. Like, this is exactly it's perfect opportunity for us to improve. I think it's always better to talk to your customer, even if it ends up not necessarily being the happiest one, because that way you have the opportunity to catch something early enough to fix it or improve that. And it's better than churning that customer without knowing why they churned, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned the content marketer on your team. Who else is on the team? How big is the marketing team?
Okay, we're a very, very small team over here. So besides myself, I have a full-time marketing manager who's an absolute rock star. That's the lady that I've already mentioned. A shout out to Lauren over here. She really does work like two people. Hopefully no one that's going to be listening to this is going to try to poach her from me. Then I have a part-time designer who helps with anything we can't create ourselves in Canva. We use Canva a lot. That's one of my favorite tools. But whatever we cannot create in Canva or simply don't have enough time to tackle that, between Lauren and I, we'll have the designer do that. We also have a part-time website developer who's also an absolute rock star and has been working like a charm with me. I love him. And then on the top of that, I work with PR agency on contract basis as needed. It's not a year-round engagement, but every 2 months or so, I engage with them when something bigger is happening and when we have something that we can release. And I guess the only thing I would add to it is that I believe in the power of PR, but it's really hard to justify that high of a cost for a full year, an ongoing basis. That's why I usually go, couple of months in, then take a break, and then go back in a couple of months.
And is that PR firm, do they specialize in hospitality, or is it just a technology PR firm? What does that look like?
Yes, they do multiple different markets, but they do have a specific person that's dedicated to hospitality industry. And I have actually worked with the same PR agency now with 3 companies. So I really, really like them and can definitely recommend them.
When we look at the marketing strategy as a whole, how do you think about the marketing philosophy?
I think my marketing philosophy has changed over time, but honestly, the longer that I am in this field, I really strongly believe in inbound first. To me, great marketing means showing up as that helpful guy and a helpful friend. A lot of that has also to do with, me trying to know the customers and trying to know our prospects, because if I know what their pain points are, if I know what their struggles are, I can be that helpful friend. I can create that helpful content and attract them to us rather than yell at them. I feel like when someone has a problem, you as a marketer should be there with those answers. And in ideal case, not ads yelling at them unless you have like some super cool product, which allows you to do some funny, entertaining, or truly educational, helpful ads.
What about AI? Obviously, AI is everywhere today. How are you thinking about the use of AI in your marketing strategy and marketing program?
Yeah, I definitely use AI, and I'm a huge fan. I feel like it's been the most exciting and transformative tool for me in marketing for mainly probably the last 2-3 years. I believe that many marketing activities, thanks to AI, can be more efficient and effective. I use it every day. So in our day-to-day operation, we're definitely starting to integrate AI tools and help us with everything that we possibly can. For me personally, it helps me automate repetitive tasks. I'm a huge fan. I don't know if you know Super Normal, but it really streamlined my meeting notes and prep and insight. I'm a big checklist person, so it truly saves me a lot of time that I have this creepy little tool listening to the entire call, and it just gives me all my checklists instead of me having to, write it as I did back in the day and then kind of do the cleanup and the prioritization and assigning all these tasks. I also use ChatGPT. I assume that majority of your listeners probably do on a daily basis. Having English as my second language, it makes me feel much more comfortable when I need to send something important out because it proofreads, in a matter of a few seconds. And as you can tell, I tend to talk a lot. I'm definitely a social creature and a talker. So I definitely use ChatGPT a lot to help me shorten my content. My good rule of thumb is every time when my email is more than 3 paragraphs long, I ask ChatGPT to shorten it for me. and it's doing the magic for me. I've also played around with Jasper, but to be honest, like I've turned it off for the last couple of months just because I feel like many times I just stick to ChatGPT instead of going back to Jasper. So I believe in the power of it. It's super great for marketers. I just don't really find as much of a need for it yet, but I'm sure I'll be going back. And I highly recommend Midjourney for generating images and visuals. That's been super helpful and so much cheaper when I think of the times when I had to pay talent to be ready to be in restaurant and, have the restaurant available for me to be there with a photographer. It's crazy that now I can just sit in front of the Midjourney, give it prompts, play with it, and I can get an image of a staff member using TipHaus's on a tablet or whatever I need. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, I'm all in on AI, and I feel like everyone probably listening is as well. I wouldn't say it's depression, but I do think a lot when I'm using ChatGPT, like, wow, so much of this work that I spent the last decade doing, I didn't have to do. Like, I got my start in PR. We were just writing a lot of press releases. Like, now a press release, takes about 5 minutes. It used to take 4 or 5 hours. And I can't really say that my press release was anything better than the ChatGPT press release. You may be a little better, but for the most part, I think ChatGPT does a better job.
I know. I so very, very much agree. And I will say, and I don't know if it's a good thing in general, because it might be very difficult for young marketers out there. But I will say that I always used to have a marketing intern or marketing assistant. And I basically don't have the need for that role anymore because it used to take me so much more time to coach this, usually, somebody young who's either finishing college or just finished. And there is a lot of reading and a lot of hand holding and a lot of direction correction happening. And with AI, you don't, because ChatGPT is like my best friend. He or she, I don't know the sex there, but they already my voice, know the TipHaus's voice. It's really helping me on a daily basis. And I feel like back in the day when I used to have either marketing assistant or interns, it took so much longer. It really took a lot of my time and energy. So I don't have the need for that role anymore, thanks to AI, to be honest.
This show is brought to you by the Global Talent Co., a marketing leader's best friend in these times of budget cuts and efficient growth. We help marketing leaders find, hire, vet, and manage amazing marketing talent for 50 to 70% less than their US and European counterparts. To book a free consultation, visit globaltalent.co.
Do you ever watch the podcast Marketing Against the Grain?
I've heard of it, but no. Do I need to give it a watch?
Yeah, give it a watch. Highly recommend it. It's Kit Botner and I can't remember the other guy, but it's the two top marketing folks from HubSpot. And they have this podcast and they've, kind of pivoted to go all in on AI. And, it's a YouTube series. They do probably 2 episodes a week. It's so good. I found that's just a great way to keep a pulse on everything that's happening in AI. Otherwise, it's like I'm on vacation for a week a couple months ago and I came back and I feel like I just completely missed out on everything that was happening. And that stresses me out. So that's a podcast I've been listening to a lot lately, just to try to keep up with everything that's happening.
Very, very cool. Thank you for the recommendation. I just realized that they are also on YouTube, so I'm subscribed to them, but it's been a while. So I'll definitely see if I can find them on my Spotify too.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good show. One of my favorites from a marketing perspective. Do you listen to any other marketing podcasts that you really enjoy?
There are a few, but I would definitely say that my favorite is the Marketing Book podcast. I know the name is pretty simple. It's hosted by Douglas Burde, and I'm probably now butchering his name, just like you butchered mine first. So he ended the podcast, unfortunately, because he retired last year in summer sometimes. But I think I've watched now 300, 350 episodes or so, but there is at least another 100 that I need to get through. And to be honest, I feel like at this point, I could be also going back to the first 100 that I listened to, now 2 or so years ago. And I would barely remember something from then. So I feel like his podcast is just super engaging, practical, and packed with a lot of insight. And I think that over the last 3-4 years that I've been listening to this, it has helped me stay sharp, discover new trends, frameworks, get some new ideas that, you need when you're in your little bubble. It definitely challenges how I think about strategy, positioning, and storytelling. I will say it perfectly bridges the gap between marketing theory and the everyday execution.
Yeah, I just pulled that up. I've never heard of that podcast. I'll be listening to that now. Insane. He published 502 episodes and each one was a book.
Yeah, that's what it was like. I wasn't sure it was already 500, but I thought it was close to it. So yeah, he did. And he's just so engaging and really fun guy. Hopefully sometimes running to him in one of the marketing conferences, that would make me really happy.
Nice. It reminds me of another podcast. I don't know who stole the idea from who, or maybe it was completely unrelated, but there's a really good podcast called The Founders. And the guy goes and does book summaries of just fascinating founders. So the example I have from the other day was Red Bull. It's like interested in Red Bull. I think it's a cool brand, but I'm probably not going to spend like 10 hours of my life reading the book about the guy. But he had a 45-minute episode where he does a summary of all of the best lessons from the book. And I can give him 45 minutes of my time. And it's just a very engaging author and just really fun lessons.
That's awesome. Thank you. I will definitely have to give that a listen as well.
Looking back at all of the episodes on the Marketing Book Podcast, I didn't even realize that there were 500 good marketing books. That's crazy to me alone that there's 500 marketing books that are worthy of doing a podcast episode.
Honestly, it's not all just marketing books. I agree that you would be like, wow, is there really 500 in there? But what he also does a lot is he pulls sales books as well. Many times he tries to tie it back to marketing. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all always selling. Doesn't matter what department you're in. So I really, really enjoy those episodes because he tweaks it with the marketing look on those sales books. It's really, really cool and very engaging. I think you'll enjoy it.
Nice. That's awesome. What I've been into lately is just reading these old school marketing books. I read the one a while back by, what's his name? I think Al Reese on positioning, where he invented the idea of positioning. I think it was sometime in the 80s. Have you read that book?
I've heard about it in school, but you know what? I don't know if I can see it alive. I should have read it, and I did. But
Probably.
I didn't get in trouble.
You probably did at some point. It's just a classic book, but it's just so funny, his perspective. And he's making the case for why positioning even needs to exist in the first place. And his reason is that, modern consumers are so bombarded with, TV advertisements and radio advertisements and all of this stuff. And just reading that now, I just have to imagine you have a heart attack if you saw just how bombarded the average consumer is today.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I just looked at the cover of the book. I've definitely had it in my hands before, but I think that was like during college. So it's been a while. I should probably also add that in my card and reread this one.
It's a fun read. I highly recommend reading it. It's just a fun perspective. I think all of those classical kind of marketing books, it's fascinating that most of them kind of have stood the test of time. Like they're still just as relevant today as they were, 30 or 40 years ago, which is always fascinating.
Mm-hmm. I honestly think the same, even outside of marketing. Like I love when you're revisiting a book that you might have read some time ago and it felt like it gave you something, but then you read it even just few years later, and it gives you something totally different. If there is something new that you can learn, I think there is never a harm in, if the book was good for you once, it's going to be good for you next time again too. It's just going to give you something new.
Yeah, 100%. I have a book that I really like called Obstacle is the Way by an author named Ryan Holiday. And it's a book on essentially stoicism. And I've read it, I don't even know, probably 5 or 6 times now. And now the book's become a bit overrun, but it was fun for the first few years. I could go through and see like, okay, this year I highlighted, these specific things and somehow I missed this gold. Now I go back and read, I'm like, oh, obviously like this is like the big takeaway. So it's just funny just seeing how your brain, kind of picks up different points depending on what's happening in your life and what's relevant in your life at that time you're reading a book.
I enjoy that book too. I definitely agree with the philosophy of obstacles not being setbacks, but rather fun opportunities and opportunity for growth and resilience. So love it.
Yeah, it's such a good book. He has another really good one called The Daily Stoic. I'm not sure if you've read that, but it's like just daily lessons on stoicism, which are really fun.
I have not. I will jump into Amazon right now and get that on my card.
Nice. We'll keep you busy. Now, let's go back to marketing and just a few more questions before we wrap, because I'm seeing we're over on time now. So in terms of marketing advice that you disagree with, are there any things that come to mind that maybe you see people talk about a lot on LinkedIn that you just disagree with or think they're not being shared in the right context?
I cannot think of anything like specifically on LinkedIn as an advice being shared, but I would say, for example, one of the things that is not working so great for marketing activities is definitely like we're staying a little bit more away from traditional event marketing. We have seen that and maybe this is more specific to our hospitality industry. I don't really know how it feels in other industries right now, but we are feeling like, going to those large industry trade shows and expos has just not been as efficient as it used to be. I feel like these shows seemed so much more high intent pre-COVID for me. Like many operators attended these big expos for us to find real solutions to their problems. But I feel like now, especially if you go to trade shows and big expos to cities like Vegas, they feel much more like corporate sponsored vacations. And it's been really hard for me as a marketer to justify ROI on those shows. So I would just say that that's one marketing activity that we're, slowly and surely doing less and less of.
For 2025, what were the top marketing priorities that you've mapped out?
For 2025?
Mhm.
So definitely working closer to with partners. We're definitely seeing a lot of success here with our partners, and webinars have been inexpensive and definitely great way for us to engage with our audience, push them into funnel faster, and continue doing content marketing, really continuing doing SEO, which we've already been really good at, and having the organic traffic. And that this kind of goes back to what I told you earlier. It's like, I believe that, if operator asks the question, we should be there to answer it, especially if this is a field that's tip management. We haven't really talked much about TipHaus yet, but if it's in our field, we should be the ones that are able to educate them and help them on this. So I would say these are the main areas that we're going to be heavy on this year.
Let's imagine that a marketer friend comes to you and they're just now taking a new role as a VP of marketing. What's your advice for them to succeed in their new role?
That's a really good question. I think it's just so very dependent on what field they are in. First of all, like what industry they are in and what's the size of their company and what's the size of their team and how far is the company at when it comes to their marketing engine machine. So I would probably honestly ask them like 25 other follow-up questions before I would be able to like just give them one pure advice.
Amazing. And I'll end it here. That's advice for marketers, or sorry, for marketing leaders. What about for marketers that are just now starting in their career? So let's imagine that you're speaking to a 20-year-old and they want to, be like you. They want to be a VP of marketing. What advice would you have for them career-wise?
Well, I would probably just recommend them doing the same what I did. Try to stay focused on being in the marketing space and getting your experience there, even if that means at the beginning that you might be making less money than you would be in some other fields. If you're truly committed and you feel like marketing is going to be the way and field you want to stay in, you probably have to be comfortable at the beginning, not necessarily having the most exciting titles and making the most money. I've personally gone through a lot of different assistant positions and just to get my experience, even some internships. I've even done unpaid internships. And frankly speaking, they were more valuable for me than a full year of college was. I learned so much. So I would really just advise them, like, just be ready to grind a little bit the first 2 years, work really hard, try to make some friends and connections, show that you're a hardworking individual that really cares and that you're always there to learn and pivot because that's what's needed in marketing. And you're set up for success if you do that.
Amazing. All right. Well, that's where we're going to end it. Awesome advice there. Before we wrap, if there's any marketers that are listening in that want to follow along with you, where should we send them?
I would probably say LinkedIn will be the best place to connect with me there. My name here is how they can find me on LinkedIn. And if they care for seeing Colorado hikes and a lot of pups and cats that I'm fostering, they can also follow me on Instagram as Czechy Táňa. Czechy as like for Czech Republic, so Czechy and then Táňa, my first name.
Amazing. I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been a blast.
Thank you so much, Brett. I really appreciate having the time here with you. It's been so much fun. Thank you.
Of course. Keep in touch.
Thanks.
This episode of Category Visionaries is brought to you by Frontlines Media, Silicon Valley's leading podcast production studio. If you're a B2B founder looking for help launching and growing your own podcast, visit frontlines.io/podcast. And for the latest episode, search for Category Visionaries on your podcast platform of choice. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.